Shalom, Ka'ala Yahweh, Bashem Yahushai, Bashem Rakal Kodash. Double honors my teachers, the apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Peace and mercy to the elect, who are the house of David reborn again in this generation. And Shalom to the 130 Yasharala, who today are known as the Negroes, Latinos, and Native Indians, who before losing their true heritage were known as, and still are, the true Hebrew Israelites of the Holy Bible. In today's lesson, we're going to talk about the secret war which is being waged against you Negroes, Latinos, and Native Indians, right? And that is being done by your number one enemy, the so-called Caucasian, right? Who biblically are known as the Edomites, right? What you're seeing here in this image is one of the top Edomites, Henry Kissinger, right? Where he actually made a quote in his book called Fire and Fury. Now, it says, it is a war between Edomites and non-Edomites. Now, I went ahead and corrected that because Henry Kissinger, he uses the word Jews, but you see, he knows that he's not a real Jew, right? You see, the real Jews of today would be your so-called Negroes, right? The Jewish term goes back to the tribe of Judah, right, which is one of the 12 tribes which come from the tribe of Israel, right? The Israelites, again, today would be the Negroes, Latinos, Native Indians. Now, back in the 700 AD period, these people, these Edomites, right, predominantly the top tribe of the Edomites, known as the Amalekites, right, which at the time around 700 AD, they were known as Khazarians, right? They had still lived in the area of the Caucasus Mountains, but they were going by the term Khazarians or Ashkenazi, okay? Now, the thing is that their whole nation at that time, under their king Bulan, decided to convert to a new religion, a religion based off of the heritage of the modern day Negro, right? That being what we know today as Judaism. Okay, they took the heritage of the so-called Negroes, right, the true Jews, and they turned it into a belief system, right? And they decided to follow this belief system in a way to stop their warring neighbors at the time, which was from the south. You had the Ottoman Empire, which was an Islamic state, right, who was basically destroying paganism countries and making them convert to Islam. And also they wanted to protect themselves against their northern neighbors, who were the Byzantine Empire, right, and also the Holy Roman Empire, which were pretty much Roman Catholics, right, or Orthodox Christians, right. Now, the thing is over time, these Ashkenazi Khazars, biblically, these Edomites, have grown in power. And that's because biblically, and when you read Genesis about the blessing of their forefather, Esau, right, which is where they get the name Edomites from, he was given rulership of the world, right, and dominion over all the world through his power and sword, right, or his weaponry. Well, in doing so, these devils understand that their rule comes at the destruction of all the other nations, namely the Israelites, the Negroes, Latinos, and Native Indians. And how do they do that? Well, it tells you here in this psalm. Let's go and read it. This is Psalms 64:1. Hear my voice, O power, in my prayer, preserve my life from fear of the enemy. Right? Notice that. Right? King David was talking against our enemies, right? And what did he say about them? Hide me from the secret counsel of the wicked. Right? And the wicked are these Edomites, these devils who the Lord would raise up to not only be a hammer and a rod of punishment for the rest of the world, so that the Lord could use them to punish us, but they would also, drive the wickedness in the world. From the insurrection of the workers of iniquity, who whet their tongue like a sword and bend their bows to shoot their arrows, even bitter words, that they may shoot in secret at the perfect. Right? And the perfect would be you Negroes, Latinos, Native Indians, you Israelites. Right? These devils, the wicked, they shoot at you secretly with their words as if they were swords, arrows. Okay? And it says, suddenly do they shoot at him and fear not. They encourage themselves in an evil matter. They commune of laying snares privily. Right? Privily means secretly. Right? Confidently or in secret. Right? So these devils, right? These wicked, they come together to lay traps privately, right? Believing that they won't be caught. They say, who shall see them? They search out iniquities. They accomplish a diligent search. Both the inward thought of every one of them and the heart is deep. But God shall shoot at them with an arrow. Suddenly shall they be wounded. Right? And how do these devils, how do they shoot at the perfect? How do they attack the people? Well, Elon Musk understands, right? He said here in a quote, he says, who do you think owns the press? Hello? All right, well, let's take a look real quick at just some of the mainstream media owners, right? And this isn't a secret, man. This isn't something that's like all of a sudden new. Everybody knows this, right? And whenever this is brought up, it's always dismissed, right? And this right here is simply just the video or news programs, right? CBS, ABC, NBC, CNN, New York Times, Washington Post, Huffington Post, The Guardian, The Economist, BBC, Vox, BuzzFeed, right? This doesn't talk about Google, Facebook, Twitter, right? Which are also owned by Amalek, these Edomites, man. See, these devils, they got us by the balls, right? And they are changing the message. This is why right now you're seeing that slaughter that's going on over in Palestine, right? Where it is a very clear one-sided war. But what does the media portray it as? Well, they portray it as a fight and not a genocide, right? And that's because these people ultimately own the media. They own what gets said. Now we're gonna go and watch this video that explains how this mechanism that these devils use works, right? And it's going to reveal what they're doing, right? But before we get into this video, let's read this. This is Nahum 3 and 5. Behold, I am against thee, saith Yahweh Bashem Hashai of hosts, and I will discover thy secrets upon thy face, and I will show the nations thy nakedness, and the kingdoms thy shame. Right? And just as it said in this scripture here, but God shall shoot at them with an arrow. Well, what is that arrow? That arrow that the Lord is shooting at the Edomites is the truth of the Bible. And he's bringing his prophets, right? Us here at Great Millstone and all the other brothers out there who are teaching this word in sincerity and in truth, to bring out the truth of who these Edomites really are, what the Bible actually says about them. What is it that they're actually doing? Why are they pushing out this world, pandemic, right? What's behind all this? Well, we're telling you why they're doing this, man. It's because they are preparing for a war against God when he comes back for his second coming, right? But, that's a whole other video. But let's go and get into this video just so you can see the machination of Edom and what they're doing, specifically the top tribe of Edom, the Amalekites. Okay, let's watch.
While many groups and governments wish to censor the internet, Israel and its partisans are among the most globally significant. They work to promote the Israel narrative while blocking facts about Palestine, the Israel lobby, and other subjects they wish to cover up. Much of this is done by devoted individuals acting independently, voluntarily, and relentlessly. But many of these activists are part of orchestrated, well-funded projects sponsored by the Israeli government and other pro-Israel groups. They utilize Israeli soldiers, students, American teens and seniors, and range from infiltrating Wikipedia to influencing YouTube. As we'll see, some even operate out of Jewish community centers in the US. One such group is the Israeli military's New Media Desk.
It is well known nowadays that what happens on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube has great influence on events as they occur on the ground. The internet too is a battleground. It is thus comforting to learn that the IDF employs soldiers who tweet, share, like, and more.
Another project initiated in 2011 by the National Union of Israeli Students has the stated goal to deepen and expand Hasbara, or state propaganda activities of students in the State of Israel. Under this program, Israeli students are paid to, quote, lead the battle against hostile websites. The students are tasked with what many would call shilling or trolling in online forums and social media. They're directed to create original content in the form of news reports and blogs, edit Wikipedia, inject pro-Israel messages into discussions on social media, as well as to report and remove what they consider to be allegedly anti-Semitic content. It's important to note that criticism of Israel is not the same thing as anti-Semitism, despite Israel's best efforts to redefine the word.
Anti-Zionism is the new anti-Semitism.
Anti-Zionism is anti-history, anti-humanity, and anti-Semitic. It's pure anti-Semitism. Let's use our power on social media to educate our society.
Now, interestingly, this charity, the International Holocaust Remembrance Association, has also given a number of examples of what sort of behaviour should be called out alongside this, which are actions which seek to stereotype Jewish people, to justify attacking or killing them, claiming that the State of Israel is a racist endeavour, or comparing it to Nazi Germany.
When there is dissent expressed in the United States against policies of the Israeli government, people here are called anti-Semitic. What is your response to that as an Israeli Jew?
Well, it's a trick. We always use it. When from Europe somebody is criticizing Israel, then we bring up the Holocaust. When in this country people are criticizing Israel, then they are anti-Semitic.
Now, I know what they do because I used to ask them to do it. I mean, when I was in the Mossad and we had a guy that gave us problems in the U.S., and he was speaking out, and he was talking like Pete talked once and said, Israel is bombing Lebanon with cluster bombs. We say, hey, who's that guy? You know? And of course the campaign starts, and before you know it, the guy's labeled. And he's an anti-Semite, because that's what we say he is.
Another pro-Israel organization that targets public information on the internet is CAMERA, the Committee for Accuracy in Middle East Reporting in America. A 2008 expose revealed a CAMERA initiative to infiltrate Wikipedia in order to rewrite Palestinian history, pass off crude propaganda as fact, and take over Wikipedia administrative structures to ensure these changes go either undetected or unchallenged. Leaked emails from CAMERA called for volunteers to secretly work on editing Wikipedia entries. They were instructed to, quote, avoid for obvious reasons picking a username that marks you as pro-Israel, or that lets people know your real name. The emails emphasized that volunteers were to avoid editing Israel-related articles for a short period of time after signing up as editors to avoid arousing suspicion, and to always log in, because if you make changes while not logged in, Wikipedia will record your computer's IP address. In 2010, 2 Israeli groups began offering community workshops on Zionist editing of Wikipedia entries with the aim of making sure that information in the online encyclopedia reflects the worldview of Zionist groups.
Moetzet Yesha, in conjunction with My Israel, has arranged Instruction Day for wiki editors. The goal of the day is to teach people how to edit in Wikipedia, which is the #1 source of information today in the world. As a way of example, if someone searches the Gaza flotilla, we want to be there. We want to be the guys who influence what is written there, how it's written, and to ensure that it's balanced and Zionist in nature.
And again in 2013, there was evidence of pro-Israel tampering with Wikipedia when an employee of an Israeli institute called NGO Monitor edited articles about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict in an allegedly biased manner. According to the Israeli newspaper Haaretz, Dreiman concealed the facts that he was an employee of NGO Monitor and that he was using a second username which is forbidden under Wikipedia's rules. In 2017, yet another Israeli project was launched with the intention of controlling discourse and promoting a pro-Israel narrative online. Known as ACT-IL, the project uses a software application that leverages the power of communities to support Israel through organized online activity. The software is a joint venture of Israel's IDC University, the Israeli American Council, and another American group called the Maccabee Task Force, which was created to combat the international boycott of Israel over its human rights abuses, which it terms an anti-Semitic movement. The project is also supported by Israel's Strategic Affairs Ministry and Israel's intelligence community. Its CEO is an 8-year veteran of Israeli Army intelligence named Yarden Ben Yosef. Israeli media Ynet News reports that the Israeli military has begun scouring Jewish communities abroad for young computer prodigies to recruit for its ranks.
In Operations Pillar of Defense and Protective Edge, we set up the first advocacy situation rooms here at IDC. We operated together with hundreds of volunteers who work around the clock for Israel on social media networks. Through the operations, we realized that when many people work together, it is effective. This understanding led IAC and IDC to partner and found ACT-IL, the online community for Israel.
Jewish news site The Forward calls ACT-IL a new entry into the online propaganda war that has thousands of mostly US-based volunteers who can be directed from Israel into a social media swarm. Its work so far offers a startling glimpse of how it could shape the online conversations about Israel without ever showing its hand. The Forward article reports that the project recruits Jewish teens and adults and sometimes operates out of local Jewish community centers. They are referred to as media rooms, and there are at least 5 of them planned or active in the United States, including 1 in Boston, 2 in New Jersey, and 1 opening soon in New York. After being given ACT-IL advocacy training, the volunteers are instructed to complete missions, which are assigned from a headquarters in Herzliya, Israel. The Forward reports that in November, the Boston Media Room created a mission for the app that asked users to email a Boston area church to complain about a screening there of a documentary that is critical of Israel. The proposed text of the email likened the screening of the film to a white supremacist riot. In reality, the film, Occupation of the American Mind, investigates Israel's PR war in the US and was promoted by respected American progressives, including Democracy Now!'s Amy Goodman.
We hear over and over again that the conflict comes down to Palestinian terrorism and Israeli security.
If rockets fly on your head, you're allowed to defend yourself.
And what gets pushed out of the frame entirely is the fact that for almost 50 years, Palestinians have been systematically dispossessed from their land and denied their most basic human rights.
They have been able to effectively defend the indefensible to the American public.
The Israeli government is involved in numerous internet projects. Director General of Israel's Ministry of Strategic Affairs, Sima Vaknin-Gil, told a forum of Israeli tech developers to flood the internet with pro-Israel propaganda. When she was Israel's chief censor, she said, "We censor information that is critical to our enemies, who have no capabilities like us, do not have a Jewish brain, and therefore our enemy relies to a large extent on open information." Her ministry has a budget of roughly $70 million to fight what it calls a war on consciousness terrorism. To win it, she said, Israel must use tricks and craftiness. Another Israeli entity that plays a role in covert internet activity is the Israeli military's legendary high-tech spy branch, Unit 8200. This unit is composed of thousands of cyber warriors, primarily 18 to 21 years of age, some even younger. An article in the Jewish press reports that Unit 8200 has developed a great reputation for effectiveness in intelligence gathering, including operating a massive global spy network. Numerous Israeli tech companies, many of them headed by former military intelligence officers, assist in these online spying efforts, sometimes receiving Israeli government funding for digital initiatives aimed at gathering intelligence on activist groups and countering their efforts. To be clear, this is all part of an effort by an occupying government and its military working covertly to achieve censorship of reporting on its atrocities. Major internet companies have reportedly been cooperating with Israel. In 2015, Israel's deputy foreign minister visited Silicon Valley and met with YouTube's CEO and Google's director of public policy. Afterwards, Israeli media reported that it was agreed that the companies would strengthen ties with the foreign ministry and build a regular mechanism of control to prevent the distribution of these incendiary materials on the network. Google is not the only tech company with close ties to Israel. For example, Facebook's head of policy in Israel, Jordana Cutler, had previously been employed for many years by the Israeli government. In 2016, Fortune magazine reported that Facebook, Google, and YouTube are complying with up to 95% of Israeli requests to delete content that the government says incites Palestinian violence. Among other things, Google said it would increase the number of members of its Trusted Flagger program, which enables certain organizations and government agencies to report content. It also said it would increase support for NGOs and organizations working to present a corrective voice. One such trusted flagger is the Anti-Defamation League, commonly known as the ADL, whose mission includes standing up for Israel. The ADL considers criticism of Israel to be anti-Semitism. The ADL has created something it calls the Online Hate Index, aimed at recognizing what it considers hate speech and targeting it for censorship.
By combining artificial intelligence and machine learning with social science, the Online Hate Index will ultimately uncover and identify trends and patterns in hate speech across different platforms.
A leaked secret January 2017 ADL strategy paper detailed how to counter the pro-Palestine movement. Among its many strategies were some focused on the importance of efforts in cyberspace. The paper called for a mix of policy advocacy and industry engagement with corporations such as Google, Facebook, and Twitter in a manner consistent with the ADL Center for Technology and Society and its Anti-Cyber Hate Working Group. The detailed 32-page document reported that in recent years, a massive investment of resources and talent had been directed against the pro-Palestine movement. One of the results, the paper said, was to create a worldwide pro-Israel network. It was this network that the report sought to mobilize. On March 13th, at the 2018 South by Southwest Music Festival, YouTube CEO Susan Wojcicki revealed that the company has just hired an additional 10,000 people to help review content flagged for removal. She also talked about a new feature that will soon be added to the platform.
When there are videos that are focused around something that's a conspiracy, and we're using a list of well-known internet conspiracies from Wikipedia, that we will show as a companion unit next to the video information from Wikipedia showing that here is information from Wikipedia about this event.
So YouTube will be sending people to text.
We will be providing a companion union of text.
Considering what we now know about the efforts of the Israeli government and pro-Israel organizations to edit Wikipedia and essentially rewrite history in their favor, can we expect this kind of companion unit to show up next to our videos?
So as you've seen in this video, these devils, you know, their hearts are deep, you know, as far as what they're trying to do, right? Just like it tells you in the scripture, it says, both the inward thoughts of every one of them and the heart is deep, right? So these devils really are out there trying to deceive the entire world, right? But what's happening now is that the Lord, he's now shooting those arrows back at these devils, man. This is why you're starting to see more people revealing the truth about these Edomites, about the so-called Jewish state and their tactics of how they're keeping the entire world in subjection, right? Using these tactics, right? In the end of this video, you just seen the CEO of YouTube and how she came out talking about how they're going to, you know, basically censor so-called conspiracy theories, right? Us here at Great Millstone, we've been affected by this, man. When you get into the Southern Poverty Law Center, which is another Amalekite or Edomite, you know, organization, right? That's set up for them simply to be used as you know, they say a shield, but in reality, it's more of a weapon, right? That they've gone ahead and listed the so-called Black Hebrew Israelites as a hate group. When we're not a hate group, we're a truth group, man. We're telling the truth of what the Bible says, right? And the truth is damaging to these people, right? Because why? Because it's putting their skirt upon their face, right? It's showing the world what these devils really are about, man. But this is why the Lord, sent us this message, right? This is Ephesians 6:16. Above all, take the shield of faith, wherewith ye shall be able to quench all the fiery darts of the wicked. Right? So that meaning, if you are in this truth, if you're about learning what the truth of the world is, and if you really want to get into what the truth of the Bible is, right? Because that ultimately is the truth of the world, even though these devils in the world, from atheists to the establishment, they try to make it seem as if the Bible is a joke, that it's a collection of fairy tales, when in reality, when you actually study it and you get past all the smart ass remarks about it and all that stuff, you find out that the Bible is an actual serious book. There's true wisdom and knowledge in it, right? And within its pages is the truth of the world, the true narrative of what's really going on. However, you can't just read the Bible. You must first learn what certain words mean, right? Like for example, the word Israel, right? When it talks about Jacob or Israel, it's talking about the Negroes, Latinos, and Native Indians, the people who are the Israelites today, not the people today who call themselves the Israelis who are in our land, right? Also, there's other things like mountains, right? When it talks about, we shall set a banner upon the high mountain. That's talking about mountains tend to represent governments, right? See, it's small words like this and meanings that you have to first understand before you get the true understanding of the Bible, right? This is how you put on the whole armor of God, right? And once you put on that armor, you then build up your faith. The more you understand this truth, the more the Bible, which again, reading it at face value sounds like a poetic book, right? A book of riddles, right? But once you continue to study it, understand what certain words and phrases mean, you understand what the narrative of the Bible is, and that it actually pertains to people that are alive today, then you start to understand it. And when you start to understand it, you build up your faith. And when you build up your faith, then when these devils come out with these lies or these tactics to try to dissuade you from the truth by giving you lies, then you can't be dissuaded anymore, man. You now have the shield of faith on you, man, which you can now protect yourself from all these lies that these devils are trying to push upon you, man. All these lies that the rest of the society is falling for, man, right? So hopefully this video was edifying, Akim. I just wanted to show you. I thought it was a great video that gives a lot of good details on some of these tactics these devils are using to try to mislead the people out there. But once you have this knowledge, let it be for your knowledge, man, and let it be a good thing that you're able to quench the fiery darts that these devils are going to shoot out. This way, when anything comes up, you know how to address it, right? So with all that, I want to give all praises to Yahweh, Bashem, Yahushai, Bashem, Kwadash. Double honors to my teachers, the apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Peace and mercy to the elect. Shalom.